I think we just have to call a spade a spade. If I was a bigger loser, I'm already a pretty big loser, I would have then just brought out a spade and gone, it's a spade. But what I'm getting at here is that SmackDown has transformed, has turned into a really good wrestling television program. Not only was I excited about it throughout the day, I was like, oh man, SmackDown's gonna be later. But by the time it was over, I was like, well, can you believe it? I actually want to tune in next week. I mean, ooh-da-lally. But that doesn't mean that every single segment was good, and the only way we can find out whether we should heap praise upon it or just flip it off like Stone Cold Steve Austin is to go through the whole thing, give the good bits an up and the bad bits a down. My name is Simon Miller. If you're brand new, it's essentially a review show. Let's up those downs. Heyman and Roman Reigns as a couple are great, aren't they? Like, as soon as they were walking out to start the show, because of course they were, that's how WWE starts every single one of their programs, I was really excited to see what they were going to say. I was hanging on their every word, even before they had started speaking. And that doesn't make any sense. I also forgot to mention last week that Heyman has started calling Roman the tribal chief, so there's no two ways about it, they have been playing Age of Empires. But also here they were like, look, we're not going to lie to you, we are going to tell you what our plan is, we are going to be transparent, like some kind of James Bond villain. Remember James Bond villains? They're about to kill Mr. Bond and they go, oh, my plan is to take over the world using this pencil. And then James would get out of his predicament and he'd snap the pencil and the villain was like, I probably shouldn't have said anything. And I don't actually 100% know what their plan was, but they did ask Jey Uso, the brand new #1 contender, to come out here, and he took the microphone, and he was all like, Paul Heyman, I just want to thank you from the bottom of my feet for getting me in that match last week. And do you know what Paul said? He said, don't thank me, it ain't nothing to do with me, you have to thank my boss, and my boss is Roman Reigns. And those little things is gonna raise Roman right through the roof. The big dog didn't want any thanks either though, and even though he said it's gonna be great to have a match at Clash of the Champions, the Gold Rush, all that's going to happen is that Roman Reigns is going to whip his ass much like they did when they were kids, because of course they're cousins. Because this was SmackDown, all of a sudden Baron Corbin interrupted, and I was like, why? Why now? Does he just hang backstage of the curtain, and as soon as he hears one thing he doesn't like, he just walks out being all like, I'm annoyed. At this rate, we're gonna have to start a Corbin cuts you off counter, which is CCYOC. I think that's right. Also sounds a little bit like cock. That's the most immature thing I'll ever say. Anyway, he is still all mad because of this blatant nepotism that's going on. And look, you can't argue with that. He is 100% right. And then Sheamus joined him and he was like, yeah, fella, you're right. This is nepotism. And once again, this was also true. But what wasn't is that the Irishman blamed his failure last week on the fact that he wasn't prepared for Jey Uso. Now look, I love Jey Uso. I think Jey Uso is a talent, but that is the most ludicrous thing I've ever heard. Uso was then livid, so he challenged Sheamus and Baron Corbin to a tag team match, you know, him and Roman, and even though everybody else started to fight, Roman Reigns, like the teacher or the dad, he just hung back looking at all this and smiling. I love how emotionally disconnected Roman Reigns has become from all of this. He only cares about himself. He was smirking at these three like they were absolute morons, and I tell you, he is going to murder Jey Uso at that pay-per-view, and I am here for it. And I also want to point out, these three were Fabu. Roman Reigns, Paul Heyman, and Jey Uso, they have created just a tamale of excitement, and I'm going to give them the very special round of applause that means absolutely nothing. It also feels like WWE has already decided where they're going to go with this, so they've written the final chapter, and when you do that, it's so much easier to tell the story because you know how to make it make sense, because you know how it's going to finish. See? Simple. We were then told that later on it's going to be Alexa Bliss versus Nikki Cross versus Lacey Evans versus Tamina to decide who becomes the #1 contender for Bayley's SmackDown Women's Championship. Where the hell did that come from? Well, there's only one answer. Ever wonder why a man's yes, I am his mouth must work me bad me bad Nick else I'm where's you from house little well you know it's server gives this that earth by me this we sees the commission as a vision costs nice stuff just happens. You know myself in the past such they're not here and also looking to remember who's doing me cause as it is. Ja, wat we now. Stand me enough to have us we but our clear of my as an yeah, so out of way his server not because it will not here we but I not with that. Not that with that. Always willing to take your call. Sami Zayn was then shown in the production truck, and he was absolutely enraged that we were about to have an IC title match between Jeff Hardy and AJ Styles, because Sami Zayn is the Intercontinental Champion, so what the hell is going on? Sami Zayn is great. It was then this matchup, and before you could even say the following is scheduled for one fall, Sami Zayn was out here just running his mouth, letting everybody who would listen know that this is a travesty. He is the real IC champion, because just because he went away doesn't mean he should be stripped of his belt, and he wasn't going to allow this match to even take place before, of course, Adam Pearce, the real general manager of all of World Wrestling Entertainment, even though we don't know why, walked out and went, "Sami, you long ginger-bearded maniac, you have to go." We then did indeed get AJ Styles versus Jeff Hardy, and just to keep it nice and simple, this doesn't get old. They kicked a hoo-ha out of each other, including AJ Styles going after Jeff's injured knee, although to be fair, he may have been going after the knee brace, because Styles has been so mad about this damn knee brace that clonked him in the head, maybe he wanted to get it and just rip the plastic. We then had one of those situations where WWE kicks itself right in the face, because beforehand they've just done too many DQ finishes. Because even as soon as it started, I said to myself, well, the only sensible way to end it is for Zayn to return and just stop it mid-match. And that's exactly what he did. AJ Styles was going to go for the phenomenal forearm, he got beaten up, and then Sami Zayn haluva kicked the head off of Jeff Hardy. I mean, it rolled. So yeah, if WWE didn't do this 679 times a week, this would have been fine. And to be honest, it was also fine, mostly because I just think Sami Zayn is simply the best. Tina Turner, and obviously in this instance, it actually made sense. For some reason, that tag team match between Roman Reigns, Jey Uso, Baron Corbin and Sheamus was then just made official. We also saw Roman and Jey in the back, and they were just hanging out with each other, and I love how Uso cannot see what is about to happen to him. Like a blind man would be able to see this, or Rey Mysterio. We then cut back to the ring, and Jeff Hardy was just stumbling around for some reason. The commentators then let us know, oh, well, he hasn't actually passed out, he's regained consciousness. And the ridiculous twist here was that apparently he was dehydrated. I mean, I wanted to rip my own nose off. We learned all of this after we came back from a commercial, and I literally said out loud, what the flub? And many people, quite rightfully I would imagine, think this is some kind of jab at AEW and everything that happened with Matt Hardy, but in my heart of hearts, I'm going to pretend that's not true, because I don't like this idea of brothers warring even though when it's out of their control. Either way, it sucked. I mean, what's the payoff here? You either go in one direction where Jeff Hardy gets addicted to water, you're like, oh no, Jeff, you're addicted, or two, he refuses to drink any water and he's dehydrated all of the time. Absolute crap. Down. All of this left Styles furious as well, and my big question is, what the hell happened to him and Joseph Parks? I really enjoyed that pairing, and where the hell is the piss board? We also had some nonsense with Cesaro, Nakamura, and the Street Profits afterwards. Now that they are going to have a match on Raw, I think Montez Ford and Dawkins can just go wherever the hell they want. So as the SmackDown Tag Team Champions were in the Championship Lounge, they arrived and were like, hey, we're champions too, let's have a little bit of a shindig. Cesaro and Nakamura, and they're like, no, we have to go have a match, but listen to us, don't touch anything. So of course, as soon as they were gone, the Street Profits started eating popcorn like they'd never seen popcorn before in their life. We also had a little bit of a promo with Kalisto crowning himself the leader of the Lucha House Party. And of course, Dorado and Grandmother Metalik didn't like that at all. And I also didn't like it, because surely he should be the host of the Lucha House Party. Parties don't have leaders. We were then forced to watch more of this gibberish with Jeff Hardy as somebody just shouted at him like he was 5 years old, Jeff, you need to drink more water. Sami Zayn then beat him up. Good. Remember what I said earlier about WWE doing the same finishes over and over again? Well, welcome to Cesaro and Shinsuke Nakamura versus the Lucha House Party. Also, I have no idea what the hell is going on with the tag team divisions on both Raw and SmackDown, because it's like Groundhog Day. You take two teams and they just fight every single damn week. Down. The actual match itself was pretty good, but yes, halfway through the Street Profits appeared on the big screen and they had turned the Championship Lounge into some kind of, I don't know, rave, and Cesaro and Nakamura were so furious about this, I suppose because they'd spent all that money on the food, you remember the popcorn, that Kalisto surprise rolled up the most devastating move in all of Supports Entertainment onto Cesaro, and he got the pin. I mean, what the shib. It's every week. I swear it's every week. Pull the board down. That's number 75, I think. I can't even keep up with it. but I think I've made my point. Even if it's actually 73 or it's actually 78, we are in the 70s. It's too many surprise roll-ups. Ford and Dawkins loved this, and they started to party even harder when the Lucha House Party also turned up. And that's not right. This was the Champions Lounge, and as far as I know, they ain't no champs. And then that damn hero Bayley arrived. Somebody give her a prize, or somebody bake her a cake, somebody just give her something. She is getting it up. Because the first time in ages, we actually had a sensical promo after somebody, what I would say turned heel, but I guess turned mega heel, because she was a bad guy already. And to be fair, Cedric Alexander also did that on Raw, but I'm just appreciating all of it. Anywho, do you want to know why she attacked Sasha Banks like she brutally did last week? Because deep down, Bayley knows that if she hadn't have struck first, Sasha would have struck her. Paranoia getting in your head and painting your own insecurities on somebody else. We've all been there. The brain is a crazy thing. I thought it was wonderful. Bales was also upset because everybody was so concerned about Sasha Banks, but nobody was concerned about her. Well, you're not Bayley. I am concerned about you. She then finished this off by saying, look, it's nice and simple. I know that Sasha Banks was using me because I was using Sasha Banks. It's so good. She's like some kind of superhero villain. Somehow this feud has to main event WrestleMania 37. I don't know how we're gonna do that because it's years away, but Bayley was great here and all of this made sense. I really enjoy it when things make sense. She wasn't done either because when she saw Nikki Cross entering for that #1 contender match, she just got the chair that she had walked to the ring with and she just whammed Nikki right in the back. I know I shouldn't have laughed, but it was so over the top and violent, I did have a little bit of a chuckle. As we already know, WWE trainers and medical personnel are idiots, so they just said, Nikki, do you want to have a fight? And she went, yes, please. So we just allowed her to get in the ring, and the whole time Alexa Bliss was there with more braids, dreadlocks, whatever the hell you want to call them, looking all like, oh, I'm really concerned. But deep down, you know she doesn't care. The problem with all of this, though, is that it's impossible to justify. Lacey Evans hasn't been on TV for around about 72 years, and Tamina at one point, she was meaner, but in recent weeks, we haven't seen her. And that is the best line I'll ever say in my life. On top of that, Nikki Cross won. Why? Why? Where is Bill Murray? Why do the same things keep happening over and over? We have seen Bayley and Nikki Cross for the SmackDown Women's Championship. The first time we saw it, I am 99% sure I still had hair. Do you know how it ended too? Tamina went for a super kick that I guess wasn't mean enough. Nikki Cross got out the way and she won after the most devastating move in all of sports entertainment. Bring it down. Add another one to the board. I can't even remember the number. I mean, I talked about it 5 minutes ago, but they happen all the time. It's just too much. It's getting it down. Now, thankfully, there was some cool stuff in here as Alexa Bliss became our saving grace, because halfway through this, she was on the outside with her best friend, apparently Nikki Cross, and she sister Abigail'd her right into the mat. Even kissed her head, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. She then just left because she was all in that trance again, and I am absolutely terrified that WWE just drops this. Don't forget the hacker. But if we come up with a really good payoff, this should be one of the most fascinating things we've done in ages. I mean, what the hell has happened to Alexa Bliss? The Fiend. Talking of dropping stuff too, we got another vignette for this woman that we saw last week, and she got her fur coat on again. At one point she clicked her fingers. I now no longer think it is Peyton Royce, because it wouldn't make any sense given what we saw on Raw. Maybe it's Mandy Rose, maybe it's Carmella, although I did do a little bit of digging, and if you can believe it, it also may be hinting at the return of Lars Sullivan. I mean, you just never know. It was then John Morrison versus Otis, because you know, on last week's episode of SmackDown, Morrison had stolen the Money in the Bank briefcase, only to find out the contract for the championship shot was in the Money in the Bank lunchbox, so now I guess he wants the revenge. Has nobody told Johnny Boy that even if he does get his hands on it, unless there's a stipulation involved, you're just walking around with somebody else's things? I don't get it. With that said, I did quite enjoy this match, so it's gonna get an up, especially because Otis won after the Vader bomb, and he's looking quite strong. But then, of course, Miz, who was on commentary, grabbed the Money in the Bank lunchbox, this is so hard, and he chucked it to John Morrison, and they ran away. The big reveal, however, I think, and I may get this wrong, is that the Money in the Bank contract is now in the Money in the Bank briefcase, and then inside the briefcase is another lunchbox, and the one that John Morrison and The Miz had was a ruse. How is this so complicated? It honestly feels like what happened here is that WWE played that game where you write down one sentence on a piece of paper, you fold it over, and then you give it to the person to your right. They're not allowed to see what you wrote, so you write something else, and then you go round the table. At the end, you unravel the whole thing, and that's your story. That's what this feels like. The punchline too was the Miz and John Morrison opening it and just finding an apple core. Now I will give some credit because John Morrison said to the Miz, wait, didn't you tell me that this is a waste of time because we can't do anything? And the Miz tried to justify that by saying, oh yeah, but there's always loopholes in contracts. It's not how contracts work. If I go into somebody's house and I get the deed for their property, but I just scribble on it, doesn't mean I get to then have their house. I'd be kicked out and I'd be put in jail. And look, I'm sure this is for kids and kids are loving it. I get it, I really do. But for me, an old grumpy man, down. Unlike the majority of the internet though, I really enjoyed the Firefly Funhouse segment. I'm actually quite confused as to what all the controversy is. Up. After Bray Wyatt had told us that dealing with loss is hard, although he only had that Universal Championship for a week, so he couldn't have been that attached to it, he did live up to his promise and he introduced a brand new member of the Firefly Funhouse. I think it was called the Persevering Parrot. Unfortunately, he'd already killed him by accident, so that was quite dark. The Vince McMahon puppet then arrived and said that Bray Wyatt was a failure, he couldn't handle the responsibility, and therefore he is going to bring somebody brand new into the Firefly Funhouse to take control. And yes, it was what had been hinted at in the week due to a trademark leaking. It was the Wobbly Walrus. Now one, surely this is a rip on Paul Heyman, because of course now the Fiend would have beef with him, given what Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman did do. And two, have we all forgotten about how the Firefly Funhouse started? I've seen so many people go, oh, this is so stupid, this is so silly. But that's what we thought when we first saw Ramblin' Rarrett, but now we all think it's the most creative and best thing ever. What happened to the faith in Bray Wyatt? This makes perfect sense within the confines of what we've been told the Firefly Funhouse is. I just don't get how anybody can go, oh, this is so silly, and they look at a pig dressed up like an 80s workout routine guy and be like, oh man, it's just the best thing ever. We do have to see where it goes, but Bray has built up my confidence enough that I trust him, and I bet it's just brilliant by the end, and we're just going, oh my gosh, Bray Wyatt, he's so clever, he's so smart. So yes, I thought it was okay, and also, we got to see the Vince McMahon puppet. That thing is amazing. And look, if I am wrong, good. You can call me an idiot, and then you win twice. It was then time for our main event, which was of course Roman Reigns and Jey Uso taking on Sheamus and Baron Corbin. And I thought it rocked mostly because WWE clearly has one eye, like Rey Mysterio, on what's going to happen at Clash of Champions. Up. Because it seems that Roman's new gimmick is that he forgets that he's a wrestler and he turns up fashionably late for wrestling matches, because after Jey Uso had made his entrance, Sheamus and Baron Corbin beat the absolute crap out of him, but where was the big dog? He was nowhere to be seen. Maybe he'd left his oven on. But just as Sheamus was about to bro kick Jey Uso, all of a sudden you heard dun 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 dun, and Roman did come out. He blind tagged Jey Uso, which was a little bit of a dick move because Uso had been so courageous here. He hit Sheamus with a spear and he got the 1, 2, 3. So again, he's listening to his t-shirt, show up, win and leave, whatever it says. Dre then tried to celebrate with Roman afterwards by lifting his hand, but this was like you touching your dad after you failed your maths exam. He just snapped his neck at Jey Uso like, don't you dare lay your hands on me. You couldn't even figure out 2 + 2 = 4. He had this glare on his face like he was about to take Jey Uso to the woodshed, and I never really understood that phrase. Like, what are you gonna do? Go to the woodshed and build a table? What the hell is happening in the woodshed? But the whole point is that it's quite clear Roman Reigns is not a big fan of his cousin. When we get to that pay-per-view, Jey Uso, you better be on your best behavior, because new bad guy Roman, he is gonna murder your ass. So yeah, Roman was not pleased, and who the hell knew that WWE could get me so excited for a Roman Reigns versus Jey Uso match? But they really have. And much as I teased at the start of this show, SmackDown is really good. I don't even care, this is getting up. Now don't forget to leave a comment below and let us know what you thought about last night's episode of SmackDown. Like the video, share the video, subscribe to WhatCulture Wrestling, head over to WhatCulture.com, read yourself some articles, follow WhatCulture on Twitter, WhatCulture WWE, and watch more videos here on WhatCulture Wrestling. My name is Simon from WhatCulture. Thank you very much for joining me for another week of ups and downs. Make sure you check out all the other ones, and I'll see you next week. There's no pay-per-view tomorrow. Who knew?